Hey, this is Jason from the Surf Hermits, coming at you live from the Surf Hermitage, as you can see behind and around us here. And we're here for a very special purpose, a Pi Records Rig Rundown. Okay, let's talk about the gear behind the Surf Hermits. Gear is an interesting thing. It's kind of something that we can get a little too obsessed with. But at the same time, we need tools and effective tools for what we're trying to accomplish. My personal belief, in total contradiction to the piles of crap that you see behind me and around me, I don't believe that you need a lot of gear to get things done. If you know what you want to hear, you're 80% of the way there, and the rest of it is just figuring out how to get what you're after. It's easy to throw money at things. It's easy to throw equipment at things. I really like to throw ingenuity at things if we can. And I don't consider myself particularly ingenious in any way, but I really believe that there's ways to make it happen with what you got. If you have a Squier Bullet Strat and a cheap amp sitting in a corner and some way to record, you can make surf music if you want. It's just a matter of making it happen. It can be done in lots of different ways. Obviously, there's a lot of traditionalists in this particular genre, and there's certain pieces of equipment that they feel are absolutely necessary, and you're going to see those all over the place. You're going to see Bandmasters and Fender Showman and external Fender reverb tanks and Surfy Bears and Jazzmasters and all of that stuff, and that stuff is amazing. I personally haven't had the resources or the ability to put those things together for myself, but I didn't let that stop me. I've got other things, I've accumulated other things since, but really the basic tools that I had when I started this still serve me amazingly at this point, and I think it's true for anyone. Work with what you got, get the most out of it before you buy something new. Of course, it's fun to buy something new. If you can do it, why not? But I think sometimes that can take over the creative aspect of it. That being said, I wouldn't consider myself a surf traditionalist in any way. I'm just doing my thing, and it happens to be a little bit surfy. And some other people agree, and some other people don't, and that's fine. There's a place for everyone. There's some amazing people doing trad surf stuff, and I love that. Love to hear it. They don't need me making it worse for them. So let's talk about the very basic things that I started this with, and I'll be continuing it with, actually. My absolute favorite, my one and only, my Telecaster. 86 Japanese-made Tele Deluxe. Great guitar. I replaced the neck on it, not for any other reason than I liked the look of a maple neck way back when I was playing punk rock and first sort of had grabbed onto this guitar as the guitar I was going to play. Complete aesthetics, and I don't know, it doesn't make any other difference really. I found it easier to see where I was putting my fingers. I'm still a pretty beginner guitar player in a lot of ways, so as I gain vocabulary and learn more about what I'm doing and what I want to do, that has come organically along with this particular guitar in a funny way. Like my hands are growing to this this tool, which is interesting. I still have the original neck for it. Nothing was wrong with it. It's just I've had this maple on here now this long, and I like it, so I leave it on there. Plus, if I'm ever operating behind enemy lines, it doesn't say Fender on it, so therefore, if I'm captured, no one will know this is a Fender Telecaster, right? Okay, so been modified a fair bit over the years. When I first kind of started playing guitar, which is actually a weirdly long time ago, even though I wouldn't consider myself to have seriously started playing guitar except for a couple of years now, but 2008, I joined a punk band in which all of the members had to play instruments that they didn't know how to play. I'm a drummer mainly. I played professionally for many years, session work, all sorts of stuff. But in this band, I had to play guitar because that was the one I played the least. A great friend of mine who's an excellent keyboard player and saxophone player, he got stuck on the bass. A guy whose main skill was that he was a kung fu teacher, he got put on the drums. And a guy who was the most amazing guy on Rock Band, you know, the old Xbox video game. Like he could do all the songs on Expert, but he ended up being the singer. He'd never really sung before either. So it was a super cool band called the Bangkok Motorcycle Gang, if you ever want to look it up. I think we did, our first album was written, recorded, and on FM radio within 2 hours. No word of a lie there. The whole concept of that band was that we would just write songs right there and record them right there. And if we got to the end, then that was the take. There was no standards of quality or anything applied, which sounds goofy, and it was, but actually it was weirdly educational. Anyway, I used to play this guitar in that band. And what I found is that when I was playing hard, my hand would hit this pickup selector and knock it into the bridge position. So the stock pickups in it, the bridge was quieter. So the guitar would get quieter as the tune got more intense, and I didn't like that. So I ended up, first I had swapped the original pickups out for a set of Fender noiseless just to kind of cut the buzz down a little bit. But then when I was having this problem with the volume dropping, I ended up putting this Seymour Duncan little 59 humbucker in the bridge, which made it louder when it got down there. So that was the only purpose. I had no idea what the pickup would sound like or had any goal for what the pickup should sound like. It was just a louder pickup, so I put it in there. And then I also changed the bridge saddles from the kind of threaded rod kind of ones to a compensated saddle, which makes the intonation better. And this guitar has kind of evolved into like a rock solid, the tuning on it is just amazing. Like I can go out of the studio and be back in a couple days later and it's still perfectly in tune. I can bend on it. I run 11s on this, much to the chagrin of my fingers. But, you know, I mean, there's heavier for sure, but it's a relatively heavy-ish gauge. Is it because of amazing tone? I don't know. I read an article about heavy strings and tone, so I put heavy strings on it and then left it for years. I didn't play very much for a long time. And that's just how the guitar was when I picked it back up again and started at it. And so I'm used to 11s now, so that's the only reason. Pure unconscious habit. Yeah, great guitar. I found this guitar, or I was given this guitar actually, by a good friend of mine. Used to be played by a country guy, I think. Look at that belt buckle gouge. Good friend of mine, Steve Barry, amazing guitar player. I played in several bands with him over the years. He's now like one of the best construction project managers for set building and design in the film industry. He works for Netflix a lot, does a lot of big shows that way. Really neat guy, interesting life. We used to do all sorts of crazy things, camping and shooting and music and everything. Anyway, he owned a guitar store in Victoria, British Columbia, and a lady approached him and said, "My husband recently died. He was a guitar collector. Can you come and look at his collection for me and, you know, assess it for me and just see what it's worth and you know, tell me how I can sort of get rid of these guitars now?" So Steve, I must have been hanging around in the store that day. He's like, "Hey, you want to come with me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." So we go to this house, and he was a bit more than a guitar collector. He was like, you know, I don't know a guitar slut maybe. It's like everything, any guitar that came to his door, he would buy. It doesn't matter. Like, you know, the cheapest, whatever, he would buy it. So when we went in the house, it wasn't like there was, you know, 50 guitars in there. There was bedrooms full of guitars, standing in cases on end, completely full. So if you had to get to the other side of the room, you'd have to get up on the cases and crawl across. There were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of guitars and other things, you know, old amps and nothing amazing in there, you know, a lot of crap, obviously. But I had consigned an amp through Steve's store and some other things, and he owed me a little bit of money, I think. And so he was like, hey, you know, thanks for helping me with this. Why don't you pick a guitar out of this and we'll be square? And I'm like, yeah, cool, you know. And so for some reason, I don't know why, I picked this guitar. You know, I thought it was cool looking. So I picked it. I picked that guitar. My dad played guitar at that point mainly, so this just went home to him. He lived in another town and sat there for many years, you know, until I picked it up for this punk project and was like, there's a guitar no one's using, I'll use this one, you know. And so that's how it came sort of into my hands. And you know, I played off and on over the years. Mainly I'm a drummer, so I'm doing many other things but on the drums. But when I picked it up again seriously, and the first Surf Hermits record, and then all the subsequent stuff, this has been it, you know. And as I learn and gain more vocabulary on the guitar, it's growing kind of organically in tandem with this particular physical tool here. So I love it. It's a great one. But at the same time, it's nothing particularly special. You know, of course I would never want to lose it, but if it left my hands, you know, another Tele could easily be put into a similar configuration, I think. But yeah, that's my thing. We'll talk about amps and things in a minute, but I'll just go through the instruments that are sitting behind me here. Probably half the first Surf Hermits record and probably half the second Surf Hermits record. And then there's probably another record worth of material sitting around as well. Gets done bass-wise on this one. This is a Fender Music Master, and I wish I knew the age. I serial numbered it a while back, but I can't remember. But this was picked up in a pawn shop probably in the 80s, I think. I originally had two of them. I had a red one as well, which was kind of it must have been a little older, I think. This one seems a little newer. But unfortunately, I loaned it to a friend who went through some unfortunate circumstances, and I never saw that one again. But this one still have, and it's kind of cool. It's got a brass nut on it. It's got that kind of Music Master single coil pickup, and is pretty much exactly how it was bought many years ago in its original configuration. It has had new strings a few times since. Probably the main bass though that I use the most is this guy, which is a Fender Urge, which is Stuart Ham's signature model. Kind of mid-90s, like late 80s, early 90s, he was playing Kubicki X Factor, which is like a headless, or the Kubicki Factor, I guess, not the X Factor, but, which was a headless bass, and that's kind of when he was the most famous. He had some solo material, and he was touring with Joe Satriani and all of that. But kind of shortly after that era, he put out this as a signature bass, which is kind of cool. It's like it's kind of got a smallish body. The neck is 2 frets more than a jazz bass, but the scale is 2 inches shorter. So yeah, you can get around on it a little easier. It's not quite as much of a reach. You can move around on it. The pick guard I took off, and it's over there. I'll see if I can get another shot of it when we're doing the amp section of things. It would build up static electricity. Every time I play this, I'd hear this little, and I'm like, man, is there a loose wire or what's going on? And I sort of had taken things apart and put things half back together, and it wasn't doing it anymore, and I hadn't put the pick guard back on. As soon as I put that on, static electricity. Take it off, no static, so I left it off. The cool thing about having it off, actually, was some years ago, in a town sort of nearby to me, Stu Ham actually came by and did a clinic. And so I had that pick guard in my bag, and I got him to sign it. So I've got Stu Ham's signature on a piece of the Stu Ham signature bass. This is cool. But yeah, it's a great bass. I actually pulled it had kind of cheap active electronics in it, and I ripped all that out because it was weirdly hard on batteries. Like 9-volt would last like a month maybe, and it shouldn't have been like that, and I probably could have got that fixed, but I got frustrated with that, and the actives just had a certain sound. So these are vintage Fender Jazz pickups, and it's been rewired, and it's kind of in it's a passive bass now, but better pickups and cool sound, and that in a way is the central bass sound of what I'm doing anyway. Let's talk about, so that's bass, yeah. Any other guitars here? Let me go back here. I should I'll bring this one over. This one's not mine, but it gets used a fair bit. The cool thing about this studio is when I lived in the city a long time ago, I owned commercial recording facilities and did lots of stuff. And my dad, who, you know, he's always had like a recording or musical setup all of my life, you know, and who really kind of got me into doing these sorts of things. You know, I would play drums for his songs on the cassette 4-track that we had in the 80s. And so when I lived in the city for a long time, but when I moved back to the small town that I came from, built a house over on another property, but we had this vacant space, and Dad and I sort of put it together like, hey, let's build a studio. So for many years now, almost 20 years now, yeah, it'll be 20 years next year, we've had this place that we sort of share together. It's set up to record large projects if we want, but you can see Dad's personal workstation back there. He's now 82 this year, I think. So still going strong, writing songs, and we're always working on things. But it's kind of cool. So we have this, really between us, we have this pool of instruments that he's accumulated over his life, and same for me. This is his main guitar, this Fender, probably mid to late 90s. I don't know what model they would have called it. It's like some sort of deluxe. It's probably the same as the it's like the Fender Ultras now or something like that. Like it's got that kind of S1 circuit. There's a button there that kind of boosts things. It has, you know, like the contoured heel and all that kind of stuff. Locking tuners. Very nice guitar. It's actually far too nice for me, so I don't really use it much, and he runs 9s on it, which feel like little noodles or something. But it has the tremolo on it, so if you hear a tremolo on a Surf Hermits tune, it's out of this guitar, almost guaranteed. Yeah, beautiful guitar, but don't touch Dad's guitar. Okay, we'll put that back. This one makes occasional appearance. The Epiphone Es3335 Pro, which is their fancy way of over-branding their Epiphone Dot, basically. It's the same as an Epiphone Dot, which is, you know, a pretty low-end Es3335 clone. It's been a great guitar, actually. Plays great, stays in tune. This particular one has push-pull pots, so you can single coil or double coil the pickups, which is cool, and it's versatile. I played in a funk band, and I was looking at what the guy from the Meters played, and the guy from like New Master Sounds and stuff, and they played this, and so this was like maybe a $500 guitar that I bought some years ago. It was the first guitar that I really truly bought for myself, and for a long time the telly was kind of unreliable. Like the 3-position switch was kind of messed up, and however, once I got the telly fixed, this is kind of languished unless I need a different sound for something. Occasionally, some of the westerny things you'll hear acoustics. So, like we have a couple of. Again, there's nothing vintage or amazing or expensive here. It's all, you know, pretty low-endy stuff that we could afford, a few $100 here and there. But very useful as tools. You know, you don't need you don't need an expensive instrument to do what you want to do. So anyway, that's the guitars. Let's talk about amps and things. All right, let's go from guitars over to amps here. We'll start where I started. Dad had this Fender Blues Deluxe, which became weirdly unreliable over the years, and it was built horribly. Like, the jacks, how they were mounted on the circuit board and stuff, were just terrible, constantly breaking. Tubes were kind of always going off. I got really sick of it and ended up pulling the entire amp out of it. So you can see it's been stripped. It's just a cabinet now. This little guy is amazing. It's like a $150 amp. Huge gain on it, so you can get massive distortion, but it's got a beautiful, big, clean sound too. So first Surf Hermits album is this combination, all of it. And I used a Rogue Tremolo pedal, which was like the cheapest one. Here, let me walk over. It's over on Dad's workstation now, but yeah, this Rogue, that was Trem. That was the whole sound. That amp. After that first record, got signed to Shawaji Records, and not because some massive amount of money appeared or anything like that, but just because it was like, whoa, okay, I better get a little serious here. I ended up buying Deluxe Reverb, and again, it's a Tone Master, so the purists are going to say, oh great, yeah, one of those cheap electronic pieces of crap. But for me, I love it. It's a great amp. It's incredibly versatile. It's got reverb and the vibrato on it, which is pretty cool. Those have a few limitations, I think. I find myself starting to think about pedals a little more, just to sort of widen the range of possibilities. But amazing amp for a lot of reasons, actually. And then I like second Surf Hermits record, which may or may not be out by the time this video appears. Anyway, it'll be soon if it's not out. Is basically just this amp, and the tuner. I use that tuner all the time, and this pedal I use occasionally. It's in right now just because I was working on a track that needed a bit more grind to it, but most of the time this one's out of the circuit as well, so it's really just straight into the amp with the effects as they are. I mean, that's 90% of the whole second Surf Hermits record. This pedal is JHS Engineering, kind of a overdrive pedal designed by Andy Timmons. That's why there's that sort of ampersand symbol on there. It's based on, I think, their previous pedal, the Angry Charlie, and it's kind of cool. Like, again, I'm no great expert, but it's got a massive amount of gain. You can sort of set here how many watts it sort of emulates in a sense. So got it in the 100 watt setting. Again, I'm not an amp expert, but from what I'm told, it's a bit like having a kind of a big Marshall head. In terms of the distortion kind of sound it gives, and it's got distortion and a boost, and it's pretty hilarious. Like, if I bypass the tuner, it's instant scream. So it's got a lot of juice, which is cool. In terms of how I record the guitar, when I use this amp, just a Sennheiser E906, which is over on the snare drum right now. We'll go look at that in a sec. Great mic. Very, very versatile, very warm, very real sounding. I far prefer it to like an SM57 or like a Sennheiser 421 for that. I started doing that with this amp, but then I was getting lazy, and I'm like, hey, this amp has a direct output, an emulated direct output, and I'm sorry about the sunlight here. The lighting's bad. But these Tone Masters have on the back panel kind of a simulated power soak kind of thing, where, you know, you can hear that gain go up. I run it on the quietest just for studio work because it's okay on the ears. Sort of simulated cabinet sound. Each position there's off, and then each of those positions is a particular model of a microphone, and then a volume control for that balanced out. But this XLR out, I run that straight into tube preamp, and then a tube compressor, and then straight into my recording rig. And that gives me a sound that I prefer to the mic sound off this amp, actually. And the amount of control that it gives me over everything from levels to ambient sound in the room to ability to record live guitar with other things going on is incredible, actually. So, though it may be blasphemy to the purists, I actually just run right out of the direct out of that amp, and I like the tones I'm getting, which is all that matters to me. So, super cool amp for that. Like if you were recording in a small space, if you had an apartment, but you were gigging as well, it goes crazy loud, but it also goes crazy quiet, and you have all the gain that the amp can give you at very low volumes. Plus you can record direct, which I love, actually. One of the greatest features of that, and they've done such a good job with this amp. It's yeah, it's amazing. Other things that I occasionally use, good friend of mine bought me that Electro Harmonix Echo, just a digital delay. I use it to kind of get that kind of East Bay Ray, Dead Kennedy sound if I need it for something. This one, even though I wasn't born in the 60s, I'm a child of the 60s in a certain way, because I just love that psychedelic cream acid rock thing. And you'll hear it on some of the new Surf Hermits stuff. There's a bit of wah hiding here and there. And if you listen to some of the EPs that we did, it's hidden on there as well. But this is a really cool wah. There's nothing mechanical in it. It just, let's see if I'll plug it in so you can see the light. You just tip it forward and it turns on and off. It's got like an accelerometer, kind of inclinometer in there, so it wahs without any moving parts. So that's pretty cool. Excuse the buzz. Yeah, in terms of pedals, that's it. It's probably some combination of there. Well, let's see, we got a few other laying around. If I'm too lazy or uncoordinated to use the wah, sometimes I'll get a bit of a wah vibe with that. It's just an envelope filter. I may have used that on a Surf Hermits tune. And then one of the newer tunes, I think, on the album has kind of a sitar break in it, and that's what provided the sitar sound. So, you know, they build up, but I don't have a pedal board or use one at all. I try and keep it as minimal as possible. I like the very basics for sure. So that's guitar rig. Bass recording is just the other side of these preamps. So guitar channel is right there. You can steal my secret settings. And then the bass channel is right there. I just plug right into the front and right into the recording rig, which is just a Roland Studio Capture. It's got 16 inputs on it simultaneous. It's got, I think, 12 XLR inputs and some other line inputs. So I like it because I can record large projects and I can leave the drums all plugged in and set up. And that's been, in a way, the secret of my working method, is that everything is here and set up and ready to go. So drums are over there, all mic'd up. Guitar's plugged in all the time. I just have to pull the line out of the guitar and plug it in the bass, and pull this thing out of the out of the amp and plug it into the preamp, and the bass is there. So it's very quick to work. I can jump between instruments very fast. Everything's always plugged in, levels are set. In terms of recording software, I use Reaper, which is an open source, relatively inexpensive but quite powerful program. Used to use Steinberg Nuendo. I've used Pro Tools before and all that. What I like about Reaper is the complete portability of the projects, and again, it's inexpensive, very customizable, and yeah, it works great for me. And then, sort of as a nod to my earlier analog days, when I first started recording, it was on analog tape, and with big mixing consoles. The last studio I had a big, 32 bus mixing console that was probably wider than my whole desk. Yeah, it was definitely wider than my whole desk. But I like having a bit of tactility. I like the ability to move a fader. And you can see on screen, if I move that fader, we get that, or vice versa. If I drag it on screen, it'll move it. So I have kind of instant access to tracks across. Yeah, it just makes it quicker to work, for me at least. Speakers are just Atom A7s. They're not too bad. I've had them for some years and I'm still learning them in a sense, just getting things to translate. But they seem to work pretty well. Got some PA stuff, Fender Rhodes hiding under there. Dad's workstation. He's running Alesis monitors, which used to be my old main studio monitors, and in some weird way I almost prefer them still, but he's got them now and I'll never pry them from his cold dead hands. He uses a Behringer interface, cheap but super stable and effective. Good interface. PA, our very first cassette 4-track. This is a duplicate of the original that we have still, and rebuilt both of them. So lots of old material on there. Old Alesis ADAT. This is kind of the graveyard corner. I've got a lot of stuff on old ADAT tapes, but this machine died on me just sitting there. But let's talk about the Warhorse. Yeah. Drums, Yamaha Recording Custom. I think I bought these in 1991. They've been on a lot of tours and in a lot of studios. And in some ways, I guess, dated, but awesome nonetheless. And again, it's one of those things as I learned to play drums more and more, it was on these, and so we've grown together into something. Yeah, not much to say about that. These are made for hitting. Mics, everything's pretty much mic'd. There's that E906, that's a great guitar mic. I use it on vocals too, actually, weirdly enough. Some Sennheisers. Yeah. Supposedly, this particular mic I bought in Victoria at an estate sale owned by one of Elvis's old guitar players. Always take those things with a grain of salt, but nonetheless, it's been a great mic. A couple of overheads up there. Close mic on the hat and the ride, so we can separate those in the stereo nicely. And then yeah, the overheads. Yeah, it's a great room. It's simple. It's just this big square, big rectangle. Kind of clouded the ceiling a little bit, but it's been such a great place to work. Everything I've done has been in here for a long time, and this is definitely Surf Hermits headquarters. So that is the rig rundown. Only 30 minutes later or whatever, but if you saw my previous interview, you know I never shut up. And so there it is, folks, the Surf Hermits, the Surf Hermitage here. Great to talk to you, share what our weird kind of idiosyncratic setup, and do this for our good buddy Ryan over at Pi Records. who is one of the biggest music fans going, and a real credit to the scene generally. All of his projects have been awesome, and I encourage you to support them and check out their stuff. Lots of likes and subscribes and all those other things that Instagram influencers say. And if you'd be so kind, check out the Surf Hermits, thesurfhermits.bandcamp.com, or anywhere that you can find Sharawaji records, sharawaji.bandcamp.com. We're proud Sharawaji roster people, and there's some great bands on that label, and all the other labels too. It's a cool scene. Everyone gets along pretty well, and lots of neat collaborative projects coming up. So please check it out, and we'll see you later. Thanks for stopping by this Pi Records Rig Rundown.